Hello, Civ students, and may the peace of Christ be with you. So, congratulations on making it to your final lecture in the Western Civ sequence. I know it's been a long journey. I hope it has been a fulfilling and meaningful journey for you. I know you've worked hard, and I'm proud of the work you've done. Today, we're finishing up our discussion of Cormac McCarthy's novel, The Road. As you'll recall, we were discussing last time this theme of carrying the fire, of bearing forth truth, goodness, and beauty in a world that is fundamentally hostile to these things, and doing that for the sake of faith, hope, and love. And that's really, despite what seems like the depressing nature of this book, what this book is really all about. So you've read a lot of experiences that the man and the boy have. We won't recap all of those experiences here, but all of them point toward this theme. So for instance, they meet Eli, the blind, faithless prophet, who is a kind of Tiresias figure, which recalls the wasteland, and he's a kind of testimony to hopelessness. But at the same time, you have the boy's kindness to Eli and the boy's goodness, and that's a counter-testimony. And much of this novel works in that way, through this sort of testimony of despair versus testimony of hope. And the man continues to cling to the testimony of hope that the boy, his son, is. And there are these little moments of grace then throughout the novel, when they find a cellar full of food, or when they finally recover the tarp. These are moments that give them hope and that point them toward some higher power, God, watching over them. And yet the man fears that God has withdrawn from the world, in the sense of that Nietzschean modern idea of the death of God. He's afraid it's no longer possible to believe. On page 261, we have the man's perspective. It says, "He walked out into the road and stood, the silence, the soliter drying from the earth." Soliter is the word that the mystic Jacob Boehm uses for the essence of Godness in the world, we might say. So the man's afraid again that it's now impossible to believe. It says, "The mud-stain shaped of flooded cities burned to the waterline. At a crossroads, a ground set with dullum stones where the spoken bones of oracles lay moldering." Right? No more oracles, no more word from on high, no more transcendence. This is the man's fear. But the boy gives him hope that that's not the case. There's this wonderful passage on page 246 where we get the boy's perspective. It says, they couldn't see it very far, could they? I was talking about the signal gun that they find in the ship, the Bird of Hope. They couldn't see it very far, could they, Papa? Who? Anybody? No, not far. If you wanted to show where you were, you mean like to the good guys? Yes, or anybody that you wanted them to know where you were. Like who? I don't know. Like God? Yeah, maybe somebody like that. So the boy suggests in this kind of quiet way to the man that maybe they can signal God, that maybe connection with God is still possible. And this is the hope, the fire that the boy carries for the man. And so even though this book is dark, even though it unveils this sort of slow apocalypse, the ending of the book is just saturated with faith, hope, and love. Especially the hope at the end that even though the man dies, the boy seems to find good people to carry on with. And so McCarthy suggests as long as there's some goodness left in the world, there's hope, however small that goodness may be. Let's look at the ending of the novel, page 278. the man says to the boy, "You need to go on." He said, "I can't go with you. You need to keep going." And these are words to the boy. They're also just words to whatever is good in us in a world that seems given over to evil. You don't know what might be down the road. We were always lucky. You'll be lucky again. You'll see. Just go. It's all right. A little further down, the boy says, "I want to be with you." "You can't. Please. You can't. You have to carry the fire." "I don't know how to." "Yes, you do." "Is it real, the fire?" "Yes, it is." "Where is it?" "I don't know where it is." "Yes, you do. It's inside you. It was always there. I can see it." He says you have to carry the fire. Where do you carry it? You carry it inside by cherishing truth and goodness and beauty for the sake of faith, hope, and love. And so he says, go. Right? You can't stay. So the man is dying. Right? But this isn't just a tragedy. It's that. It's painful. It's suffering and sorrow. But there's also still hope because there is love and faith. That's what this book is really about. So at the end, we see the father dies, but the boy finds someone else who might be able to help him carry on. Page 283. He says, "How do I know?" He's talking to the man who comes along and who has the children with him and the wife and who is a figure for the possible rebuilding of a meaningful civilization. He says, "How do I know you're one of the good guys?" "You don't. You'll have to take a shot." Right? So that's faith. "Are you carrying the fire?" "Am I what?" "Carrying the fire." "You're kind of weirded out, aren't you?" "No. Just a little?" "Yeah." "That's okay." "So are you?" "What, carrying the fire?" "Yes." "Yeah, we are." All right, so that's the hope at the end of the novel, that he meets someone who is carrying the fire, who cares for what is good, even when the world around him is evil, who doesn't use the evil of the world as an excuse to turn to evil himself, but is willing to carry faith, hope, and love with him despite the evil of the world. And that's how the novel ends, on a hopeful note. Page 286 says, "The woman, when she saw him, put her arms around him and held him. 'Oh,' she said, 'I am so glad to see you.' She would talk to him sometimes about God. He tried to talk to God, but the best thing was to talk to his father, and he did talk to him, and he didn't forget. The woman said that was all right. She said that the breath of God was his breath, yet though it passed from man to man through all of time." So we see faith surviving at the end of the novel. And then McCarthy ends with this little kind of parable or image of faith, hope, and love. "Once there were brook trout in the streams in the mountains. You could see them standing in the amber current where the white edges of their fins wimpled softly in the flow. They smelled of moss in your hand, polished and muscular and torsional. On their backs were vermiculate patterns that were maps of the world and its becoming, maps and mazes, of a thing which could not be put back, not be made right again. In the deep glens where they lived, all things were older than man, and they hummed of mystery. So he ends the book with the word mystery, this word with biblical resonances of the gospel, the great mystery passed on through the church of faith, hope, and love. And so the novel ultimately ends on this somber, definitely somber, but hopeful note as well. And that's the note we want to end the Civ class on. So I want to read to you a passage. With those of you who had me last semester know this is where we began Civ. And it's really this passage, I think, from Philippians chapter 4 that explains why a class like Civ and why the liberal arts as a form of education are so important. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any moral excellence, and if there is anything praiseworthy, dwell on these things. Do what you have learned and received and heard from me and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. So Paul says, look for the true, the good, and the beautiful, and you find there the peace of Christ, the peace that passes all understanding. So, students, may the peace of Christ be with you.